everybody, it's Calxiyn here, and if you enjoyed this video, remember that you guys should come and join our Discord server, become patrons over on Patreon. If you've watched our other videos this week, you'll know that I'm kind of dying, like my voice is just going away. Meanwhile, Hunter's here like, I wrote 65 exams, my brain hurts, your voice is just broken.
Oh, eat it, dick.
Anyways, so today we are going to be talking about mirroring in Chapter 10. So if you guys watched our analysis, you'll know I touched on this a little bit, but I wanted to kind of go on it more in depth. Like, Hunter, I don't know if you have anything to say about this because you don't know what I'm going to say yet. Is that correct? Is that a correct assumption?
I never know what you're going to do with these videos. I just sit here and you throw shit at me and I have to react.
What I mean by mirroring is that I think Ilia and Blake's situation is trying to mirror Lionheart and Ozpin. So let's just go through it again. So Blake and Ilia fight or whatever.
You briefly
Ilia
mentioned
has
this earlier.
Quote unquote, yeah, I said that.
Okay.
Ilia has done, quote, unforgivable things, you could say. A lot of people were like, if Ilia kills the Belladonnas, it's unforgivable, she can never be redeemed. Which, I mean, it didn't happen, so let's not worry about that. But, like, a lot of people were like, Ilia can't be redeemed. Like, they all said that last week.
If anything, they saved his asses. Asses.
Yeah, to an extent, I would argue that, yeah. And so, you kind of have that. Basically, what I was thinking is that Ilia then kind of changing her tune almost and being like, yes, Blake, I will stand by you, even though it's hard. Like, hard for me to sort of thing. Even though I'm scared, like, she says that she doesn't know what to do, she starts crying, all of that stuff. I think that's very powerful, for that scene, and we talked about that. But I feel like, in terms of how the scene is mirroring Lionheart, Lionheart says that he has done unforgivable things that Ozpin would never be able to forgive him for, and he tries to say this to Raven, and he says that he was scared, and that made him, like, do kind of what he had to do for himself, you know what I mean? And I feel like that is comparative to Ilia in a sense, because Ilia does have that, like, we're doing this for the greater good of the fawn. It's like, obviously, Lionheart doesn't think that way, but to an extent, Ilia is doing what she thinks is right because she doesn't know what else to do for herself. You know what I mean? And so I feel like Lionheart is sort of in that same camp that he doesn't have, I don't want to say a holier-than-thou attitude, because, like, I don't think that Ilia necessarily had that, but you guys understand what I mean at this point, I think. And so I think that kind of when you look at it that way, at the end of the day, it's both of them being scared and both of them being weak and both of them not knowing that they have another alternative, right? And so obviously at the end of the episode, Blake decides that she's gonna forgive Ilia and they're gonna work together, right? But Lionheart, for some reason, thinks that that is not a possibility for him. And so I feel like that is where the contrast, or the mirroring, happens in this episode, because you see, like, Lionheart being like, oh, you know, she'll never forgive me, and then Ilia kind of having that same, like, thing at the end where, like, the guard is just like, well, you're just gonna forgive her? Because he's salty. Because he does not get that Bella booty, obviously, and so,
and you desperately hope that Ilia will, I assume.
And so, you kind of have that idea, going on, you know what I mean? So that's what I mean by mirroring. I think that the reason why they put these two parts together is because they reflected each other well. And we've seen this happen before, like in previous episodes, but not to such a big extent. And so there's two things that they can do with this now that they've created a symmetrical image, you could say. They could either ruin it on one side, or they could keep it like that. And so what I mean is that with Lionheart, they can show one of two things. They can either show Lionheart, well, actually, before I start talking about that, you kind of see that choice, you could say, with Calxiyn and Ilia, because they're two extremes. Like, Ilia's now totally switched sides, whereas Calxiyn, we don't know, but we can assume that Calxiyn is gonna be like, my brother didn't die for this, we must continue the cause, because that's what he kind of feels like to me. Like, it feels like he is going to go even deeper in his extreme, right? And so you kind of have that idea of two choices. So I feel like Lionheart in his arc also has two choices right now, because it's supposed to reflect Ilia and Blake in that situation, since they're put together this way in the episode. And so I think that you have this idea of Lionheart switching sides at the last minute like Ilia, and deciding that he won't be a coward anymore and that he can stand behind Ozpin. And then later we'll have a scene where Crow's like, Oz, you're just gonna forgive him? And then Ozpin's like, yes. Or Ozpin may even be like, no, which again is that sort of contrast I'm talking about, because now that they've made something that is mirroring each other, they can either decide to mess it up or have it follow that symmetrical path. And so they can have the same thing happen to show that similarity between that older Ozpin generation and then the newer generation. And we've talked about Wizard of Oz generation theories a lot on the channel. Or we can have this alternative, per se, which is Lionheart showing a contrast to Ilia, that Ilia could let go and accept to be forgiven by Blake and stand behind Blake when Blake needed her most, but then Lionheart just can't do that for Ozpin, and that is why the heroes will win this time. It's because this next generation is stronger than the last, if that makes sense. So Hunter, do you want to talk about that?
I don't know. I haven't really considered the parallels between the two of them in forgiveness. I feel like forgiveness is, especially whenever it comes to Blake, a major theme. Also with Weiss, I feel forgiveness and moving on from a past. When you think about
but I mean, just parallels. Like, I'm not like Ilia and like Lionheart are the exact same. Like, no, it's not like that. But it's like because they were put in parallel together in this episode, you obviously sort of see the connection there rather than previous, right? Because they're supposed to juxtapose each other in a certain way. Anyway, you can continue. I will allow you.
I don't know if I have too much of substance to ask, other than I feel like you can get a lot of parallels with a lot of characters through that.
Oh yeah, sure. I just mean it wasn't as direct as this episode.
Now that I think about it, it's such a very pervasive theme throughout RWBY.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I feel like it does mean a lot to a bunch of different characters, if that makes sense. Yeah. But I brought this up just because Lionheart is directly parallel to Ilia in the sense that this piece of the timeline was put towards Blake's piece of the timeline, and that was rather intentional, I would say. And then, again, you kind of have people like Raven that is like, there's no shame in doing, like, what you had to do to survive, and, like, it's kind of like, who are you trying to fool? And I feel like that's, again, sort of the Corsic thing. And we talked about Corsic. We don't know what he's gonna do yet, but I'm pretty sure he's gonna be like, my brother's sacrifice was for the cause, and I will continue the cause.
That much anymore.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like he is gonna be, like, the revenge type, though. And so we just have to see, but I thought that was an interesting parallel. I like when the show does this, because it kind of shows that they know what they're doing in terms of writing convention and stuff. I know that stuff at the end was really descriptive, but you guys understand what I mean, I think.
Terribly descriptive.
Like, it's just that, like, I don't know, the writing means so much more when you can see them setting stuff up and then that stuff that they've set up comes into fulfillment, or it's just a fluke. When it's just a fluke, it isn't as interesting. So if this is something they have intentionally tried to set up, I think that's more meaningful than just being like, oh, no, we just wanted it in the same, like, thing together, it's fine. Like, I think that it shows they know what they're doing as writers when they set up certain things and then follow through, if that makes sense. So I do appreciate that, you could say, on RWBY's part. And I just feel like that, not that Ilia and Lionheart are entirely the same, but it is, like, I feel like it comes from a place of cowardice, or cowardice? Yeah. I said cowardism in the last video. Yes. But it's just that, like, it's that Ilia didn't know what to do, and, like, she was sort of, I think that she felt like she was weak to an extent because, like, and we haven't talked about this very much, but I feel like she felt like she didn't have any control in her life to an extent because her parents died and she couldn't do anything about it. And the girls were kind of
agency.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it gave her some sort of power in, you know, following
over her circumstances.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was gonna say. I'm glad that I like when you finish my sentences. It's very cute. So I feel like Lionheart is almost the same in that. Like, this is the only thing he can control, even if he is paralyzed in fear. You know what I mean? Like, even if he is being manipulated by Salem, there are little things that he can do, like talk to Raven, and that conversation. Like, he doesn't just need to be a pawn. Like, this is the only way he can kind of live and have himself, if that makes sense. Like, have agency through himself, is by obeying Salem and stuff. So, yeah. You guys know what I mean. Anyways.
It was a good scene. It was, I feel like that, I really enjoyed that scene, and it like kind of gets overshadowed by what happens in the Belladonna mansion later on in the episode.
Well, that's why we're doing it. We did its own video about it this week.
That is
The little conversation, because I knew it was gonna get foreshadowed, so to speak.
Washed out.
Yeah, exactly. And so I feel like it's important that certain things are linked together in terms of the episode, and we kind of see that in other episodes. I can't think of a certain example right now, but I vaguely remember like that Raven was doing something and Yang was doing the exact same thing. I don't think it was in the same episode, but Raven's like, she made her choice when she's talking about Yang leaving or whatever, but then Yang says the exact same thing about Blake.
Yeah.
Like, sort of those sort of parallels are very interesting to me, and I'm like, writing, like, it's nice, you know what I mean? Like, it's a spicy meatball that they're making over at Rooster Teeth, you know? Why are you sighing like that?
No, you're right. Spicy meatballs.
You say that all the time. Why can't I say it?
Yes, because you sounded very genuine about it. Anyways.
Anyway, guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, remember to become patrons over on Patreon.
You almost died there.
I'm very I've talked about this in other videos, but my vocal cords are a little fucked up. So to speak. Like I can't sing. Obviously I can talk and it's okay, but like the longer it goes on, like the more I feel like I'm being disowned by my vocal teacher, because she'll be like, oh, Calxiyn, you're trash. Like, my vocal teacher would never say that. She's a very nice person. Hunter has met her. Hunter knows that she's nice. But I also feel like somewhere she's like, every time a petal falls on this rose in my room, like, Calxiyn's voice just keeps getting worse and worse.
I feel like the egotist you are, you think people give that much a shit about you.
I mean, if my voice is bad, then I don't pay for lessons, which means she's out of like a quarter of a job.
Fair enough.
And so I'm pretty sure she may care like a smidge. All right, you know what I mean? Just like I care about some of you guys who are pretty much like 50% of my Patreon, depending on how much money you're giving me. And so that was a nice segue, I believe. And so anyway, you guys should pledge on Patreon, join the Discord server, whatever, and we will see you later. Bye bye.